Man was trapped in the beginner's village for 20 years, simply because every time he was about to reach level 5, the system would glitch and reset him back to level 1. Over these 20 years, the monsters he fought evolved from low-level wild dogs into dragons with the power to destroy worlds. With each swing of his blade in battle against monsters, his physique became extraordinarily developed. However, all of this changed today, because the system, while slacking off, suddenly noticed Bin Ryu, who had failed to be teleported to another world 20 years ago. It couldn't understand how level 4 rookie had survived here for so long, especially with such terrible stats and skills, because over these 20 years, it had summoned otherworldly heroes 5 times, but none of them survived for more than a year. So, to cover up its mistake, the system decided to teleport Bin Ryu to Terra Continent, a level 20 zone, where he would be left to fight advanced monsters on his own. However, the system never expected that the abyss of the beginner's village had already been filled to the brim by Bin Ryu with monster corpses. Because over these years, while resetting his level, the system hadn't wiped out his accumulated stats. Now, his hidden stats had reached an astonishing 1300 points. At this moment, Bin Ryu was admiring the house he had spent 2.5 years building. 20 years of endless battles had made him realize the truth. Only by keeping a positive mindset could one survive better. But just then, the house he worked so hard to build was suddenly crushed by a demon wolf. Seeing this, Bin Ryu's heart sank to despair. Before he could react, the demon wolf slapped him 200 meters away, crashing into a mountain with a massive explosion. Demon wolf smiled in satisfaction, but in the next second, its smile froze, because Bin Ryu, who took the hit directly, was completely unscathed. At this moment, Bin Ryu's gaze became as cold as the Grim Reapers from hell. With a flash, he appeared in front of the demon wolf. At this moment, he decided to use the wolf's bones to rebuild a palace. The demon wolf, seeing Bin Ryu's terrifying expression, it was so frightened that it wet itself instantly. With a backward leap, it quickly distanced itself from the battlefield and unleashed its strongest attack. A fierce howl aimed straight at Bin Ryu. But looking at the enormous beam of light, Bin Ryu didn't panic. Instead, he chose to take it head-on with his body. This scene terrified the demon wolf, which immediately used all its ultimate moves against Bin Ryu. However, Bin Ryu, upon seeing this, drew out his 10-meter-long broadsword and kicked up a cloud of dust to use as a shield, blocking all the attacks effortlessly. Then, using his left foot to kick off his right, he launched himself at the demon wolf. Just as he was about to deliver a fatal blow, his foot suddenly slipped, and, like a fool, he fell straight into the demon wolf's mouth. However, in that moment, with a split move, he shattered the demon wolf's front teeth, and unleashed his ultimate move, practiced nearly 10 billion times. Vertical slash, a horizontal strike, and a piercing thrust executed simultaneously. In an instant, he sliced the demon wolf into 2.5 pieces. As Bin Ryu sighed in relief for surviving another day, a massive portal appeared, accompanied by a crashing thunderbolt. Bin Ryu was teleported to a brand new continent, and where he landed, lay a slumbering ancient dragon. Upon landing, Bin Ryu was thrilled to discover that his level had finally reached level 5, and he was even given a main quest to eliminate the 6 goddesses of the world. The reward for completing the quest would be the ability to return to Earth with his current power. But before Bin Ryu could celebrate, the ancient dragon suddenly appeared before him, accusing Bin Ryu of being a demon from another world. Then, without warning, it unleashed its dragon breath to annihilate him. But Bin Ryu casually sidestepped the attack, and, using his left foot to kick off his right, flew towards the dragon, clenching his right fist tightly, ready to deliver a devastating punch to the dragon. The dragon, seeing his fist as weak as cotton, scoffed at his overconfidence, but in the next second, it let out a pained roar, flying backward like a meteor. After landing that punch, Bin Ryu was shocked by his own strength. But soon he subdued the dragon and brought it back, planning to extract some useful information from it. Unexpectedly, after just 2.5 days of beating, the dragon confessed everything. Turns out the dragon was a prodigy dragon from the Zuan Empire's Night Order. However, one day, a rift suddenly appeared in the sky, and thousands of otherworldly demons emerged from it, overthrowing the Empire. Afterward, the otherworldly demons formed an organization called Earth. Their mission was to kill the goddesses of the world. According to the dragon's account, the Earthlings were unimaginably powerful, able to easily level up. Through constant killing, no one could stop the army of level 100 Earthlings. Until one day, 4 heroes suddenly emerged in the world, namely Sword King Bakul, Archmage Kiana, Thunder Emperor Gabriel, and Transcender Ario. Together, they unleashed the Kingdom-level Forbidden spell, instantly wiping out the Earthling army. Then the 6 goddesses simultaneously delivered an oracle. They declared that the Earthlings were demons who had made a pact with an evil god. From that day onward, any Earthling encountered must be killed on sight without question. Hearing this, Bin Ryu was furious and gritted his teeth. He couldn't believe he had been trapped in another world for 20 years. Only to leave the beginner's village and be labeled a demon, becoming the enemy of the entire continent. And the culprit behind it all was the so-called evil god. So, he made a bold decision. To join forces with the goddesses and eliminate the evil god. Then return to Earth alive. Soon after, he learned from the dragon that the condition to meet the goddesses was to become one of the 4 heroes, or achieve a great feat. Currently, the forces of the evil god Peros still existed. To meet the goddesses, he had to defeat the monsters created by the evil god, which meant he had to become a hunter. Thus, Bin Ryu immediately headed to the Hunters Guild. But as soon as he stepped in, all the other hunters drew their weapons and assumed battle stances, because in their eyes, only Earthlings could have such a strong physique. Bin Ryu also noticed their hostility. Although he was confident he could defeat this small fry, he couldn't reveal his identity as an Earthling, so he followed the receptionist's instructions and placed his arm on the verification stone to prove himself. Unexpectedly, the result was the words level 5 rookie displayed on the stone. The hall instantly fell into dead silence. Then everyone burst into hysterical laughter. Soon, Bin Ryu learned from the receptionist that the lowest level for Earthlings was level 20 or higher, and they were also incredibly wealthy. However, upon learning that joining the guild required 300 gold coins, Bin Ryu felt as though he had lost half his life. After all, he had saved for 20 years, and barely managed to gather 400 coins. He couldn't understand why other Earthlings were so rich, but he decided not to dwell on it for now. Instead, he prepared to take on a dungeon clearing quest, but the response he got was ridicule from those around him. "Are you, a level 5 rookie, trying to get yourself killed in a dungeon?" The man with a middle part hairstyle mocked. "Today, I'm in a good mood, so I'll be generous and let you join my team. As a mascot, that is, if you give me that giant sword of yours." As he spoke, he reached out, grabbed the sword on Bin Ryu's back, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move it even an inch. Hearing this, Bin Ryu's patience snapped. He lifted his giant sword and raised the man high in the air. The man with the middle part hairstyle was so terrified by Bin Ryu's glare that he wet himself on the spot. The others around them were stunned, believing Bin Ryu to be a reincarnated demon, except for one muscular older man, immediately stepped forward to stop Bin Ryu from finishing him off, and warned him that causing damage to the guild would result in him being executed as an Earthling on the spot. Not wanting to expose his strength, Bin Ryu immediately put away his sword, and threw the middle part guy 2.5 meters away. Then he kicked him hard in the shin. At this moment, the muscular older man stepped forward to invite Bin Ryu to join his team. Initially, Bin Ryu showed no interest, but upon learning that the older man's team was ranked first in the guild, he decided to join. He believed that being in a team full of strong members would help him level up quickly. Soon, he followed the team to complete a monster clearing quest. He initially thought his teammates would occasionally leave weaker monsters for him to handle, but once the battle started, he realized he was nothing more than a pack mule. At that moment, the monsters that were being pushed back suddenly noticed Bin Ryu, who appeared weak. The monster leader then decided to target Bin Ryu and regain confidence. Unaware of the danger approaching, Bin Ryu idly sat there, flicking stones in boredom. But unexpectedly, one of the stones he flicked shot out like a cannonball, instantly killing the monster leader, which the entire team had struggled to defeat together. At that moment, a pop-up appeared before Bin Ryu, stating that the monster level was too low to gain experience. Bin Ryu was left speechless. Determined to level up, he sprinted alone into the forest, hoping to find some high-level monsters. But after running 2.5 laps around the forest, he found nothing. Just as he was about to give up and head back, he suddenly heard a sound behind him. It resembled the growl of the demon wolf from the beginner's village. Excited, he dashed toward the sound like a madman, thinking that killing it might finally help him level up. But when he reached the source of the sound, he discovered it was a naked man. Bin Ryu, staring at the naked man before him, feared it might hurt his eyes, so he quickly apologized, and turned to continue his search for monsters. But at that moment, a burst of flames suddenly surrounded him completely. It turned out to be a fire explosion spell cast by the red-haired man. Blocking Bin Ryu's path, he demanded to know if Bin Ryu had seen any monsters, and threatened to kill him if he refused to answer. But before he could finish his words, Bin Ryu flashed to his side, and crushed his staff with one hand. "Are you crazy? Just because you're high level, you think you can bully rookies?" At this moment, the middle part guy, mistaking the red-haired man for a woman, attempted to peek, only to see Bin Ryu in an embrace with the red-haired man. Furious, he drew his twin swords and charged. "You despicable level 5 rookie. How dare you harass our female teammate? Prepare to die." With that, he dashed toward Bin Ryu. Not wanting to escalate the situation, Bin Ryu lowered his head to apologize. But as he bent down, the sword hilt struck the middle part guy's weak spot. Cracking sound, like breaking eggshells, echoed through the forest. The middle part guy lost not only his pride but his manhood as well. He was now permanently a middle-part girl. To avoid being held accountable when she woke up, Bin Ryu left the team and ventured off to find the dungeon on his own. But as soon as he stepped outside, he encountered a level 31 Tam beast out hunting. The system warned that its body was armored, making it immune to physical attacks like sword slashes. But Bin Ryu refused to believe it. He drew his giant sword and struck the Tam beast. Surprisingly, it split in two as easily as tofu. Sight terrified the weaker monsters nearby. They immediately wet themselves in fear, exclaiming how cruel the outside world was, and used every ounce of strength to flee back to the dungeon. But little did they know, Bin Ryu followed them like a ghost, and asked them where they were going. The weaker monsters turned to see Bin Ryu. Terrified, they quickly dug a hole in the ground and dove in. Bin Ryu stared at the glowing circle on the ground for 2.5 seconds. Realizing it was a portal to the dungeon, excited, he jumped right in. He expected to find some powerful monsters in the dungeon, but after circling the dungeon twice and a half, all he encountered were weaklings he could kill in one hit. Just as he was about to leave in disappointment, he suddenly spotted a glowing golden bracelet. It turned out to be the core holy relic of the dungeon. However, soon, Bin Ryu sensed something was off. Normally, a relic like this should have a lord guarding it. Little did Bin Ryu know, he had already killed the lord on his way in, mistaking it for a weakling. In the end, Bin Ryu decided to pick up the relic and test its effects. According to the system, it should be capable of firing lasers. But no matter what gestures Bin Ryu tried, the relic showed no reaction. Then, a pop-up appeared, indicating insufficient user level. Seeing this message, Bin Ryu could only take off the relic in disappointment. It seemed like this unusable item could only be sold as scrap. Just then, the entire dungeon began to shake violently. Suddenly, in front of Bin Ryu, a secret passage appeared. Bin Ryu was thrilled to see it. It seemed the lord might be down there. Excited, he rushed into the passage. But when he arrived, he found the grand hall completely empty, except for a magical core that powered the dungeon standing there. However, just as Bin Ryu reached out to touch the magical core, several tentacles suddenly emerged from the void, binding him tightly. Looking up, he saw a monster staring directly at him. Noticing that the monster was level 45, Bin Ryu's grin widened. It seemed he finally had a chance to level up. At that moment, a familiar voice suddenly reached Bin Ryu's ears. When he looked toward the source of the voice, Bin Ryu was dumbfounded. It was the middle-part girl, chasing after him to avenge her second brother. However, upon seeing the demon lord above Bin Ryu's head, she mistakenly thought Bin Ryu was her inner demon. After all, how could a level 5 rookie possibly appear in an advanced dungeon? Hearing this, Bin Ryu smirked mischievously. He originally didn't know how to explain himself, but since she thought he was an illusion, he decided to play along with her imagination. However, Bin Ryu didn't anticipate that after her previous failure, the middle-part girl had adjusted her attack strategy. Now her strikes came from below. To protect his lower half, Bin Ryu immediately jumped up, squeezing his legs together. But this sudden move nearly crushed the demon lord above him. At that moment, Bin Ryu was thinking the lord was just a weakling. Meanwhile, the middle-part girl, blinded by hatred, was already chasing him with her blade, every slash aimed at Bin Ryu's crotch. As the two fought, the demon lord seized the opportunity to control the middle-part girl, amplifying her hatred and turning her into a battle-crazed demon. After successfully being demonized, she swung her 2.5-meter-long arms at Bin Ryu. However, Bin Ryu didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he drew his giant sword and slashed at the ground. The impact of his strike split the entire dungeon, including the demon lord, in two. The dying demon lord stared at Bin Ryu in disbelief, unable to understand how level 5 rookie could cause such destruction with mere sword energy. Desperate to survive, the demon lord abandoned its body and prepared to report to its superiors. But as soon as it left its shell, Bin Ryu flicked it like a fly, killing it instantly. At that moment, something suddenly appeared before Bin Ryu. A notification appeared, stating he gained 110,000 XP. Based on the experience required for the first 4 levels, it should have been enough to level up at least 10 times. However, when Bin Ryu saw the details on his leveling panel, he was utterly disheartened, because the system stated that leveling up to level 6 required 50 billion XP, which meant it would take him hundreds of years to level up. With no other options, Bin Ryu left the dungeon, planning to sell the holy relic. At that moment, a man in black suddenly fixated on Bin Ryu. It turned out, he was an Inquisition agent tasked with eliminating Earthlings. In a flash, he appeared in front of Bin Ryu. Seeing Bin Ryu's startled expression, he suspected that Bin Ryu was an Earthling. He quickly pulled out a testing stone and intertwined fingers with Bin Ryu's right hand. But the next second, he was dumbfounded. How could you possibly be only level 5? In my 2.5 years on the job, I've never made a mistake like this. Meanwhile, Bin Ryu was sweating bullets. It seemed being low level had its advantages. Had his identity as an Earthling been exposed, he would have become a public enemy. As the Inquisition agent prepared to leave, a twist of fate occurred. In the instant he turned away, the merchant at the trading post accidentally dropped the holy relic from the dungeon. Unluckily, the relic rolled to the Inquisition agent's feet. The agent instinctively bent down to pick up the relic, then coldly turned to glare at Bin Ryu. How could a level 5 rookie possess a holy relic? I hope you have a reasonable explanation. Realizing he couldn't hide his identity any longer, Bin Ryu prepared to attack the agent, while he was off guard. But just then, a familiar figure stepped in front of him. It was none other than the red-haired Ackerman, whom he had met once before. Ackerman calmly handed a token to the Inquisition agent, and explained the origin of the relic in Bin Ryu's possession, claiming he had entrusted it to Bin Ryu to sell. Bin Ryu, seeing Ackerman trying to help him, played along by calling Ackerman Master a few times. After confirming Ackerman's identity as a descendant of the Dragon Hunters, the Inquisition agent declared the incident a misunderstanding, and allowed the two to leave. But before they could take a few steps, they were called back by the agent. Tell me, what is the ability of that relic? To his surprise, the two gave completely different answers. Realizing he had been tricked, the agent immediately unleashed a hurricane cage, trapping both Bin Ryu and Ackerman. Bin Ryu, realizing the agent's true intention was to find out who shut down the dungeon, stepped forward to confess, but before he could open his mouth, a loud, foolish laugh rang out. It turned out to be the middle-part girl, riding a carriage, boasting loudly about her glorious achievement of shutting down the dungeon. Unexpectedly, she ran straight into the agent's line of sight, and was immediately arrested on the spot. Bin Ryu and Ackerman were dumbfounded by the scene. Though Bin Ryu knew the truth, he wasn't foolish enough to say anything about it. After this incident, Bin Ryu realized that his identity as an Earthling would be exposed eventually, so he said goodbye to Ackerman, and set off on a journey to level up alone. But destiny has its way of binding people together. 2.5 months later, Bin Ryu and Ackerman met again in a foreign land. This time, Ackerman strongly invited Bin Ryu to join his team. Owing to the favor Ackerman had done for him before, Bin Ryu reluctantly agreed. At this point, Bin Ryu used the system to check Ackerman's actual level. It wasn't the level 25 he claimed, but rather level 37. Bin Ryu immediately understood. Ackerman wasn't planning to use him as a porter. He definitely had other motives. Along the way, the two kept clearing out monsters, until they encountered a strange village. A strange village suddenly appeared before them. As they stepped into the village, numerous crimson lights lit up from the surrounding houses, and fireballs began shooting at them. Ackerman quickly shielded Bin Ryu, and raised his staff to absorb the fireball magic from the monsters. Ackerman smirked and said, "How dare they show off fire magic in front of a fire mage like me?" Clearly, the monsters hiding in the houses weren't very smart, as most of the flames were absorbed by Ackerman. A wolf demon suddenly charged out of a house, spear in hand, rushing furiously at Ackerman. But Ackerman was clearly prepared. He hurled his staff directly at the wolf demon. Before the wolf demon could react, the staff exploded, instantly engulfing the entire village in flames. After the flames subsided, Bin Ryu and Ackerman found a peculiar corpse in the village. It was frozen solid despite the 2000-degree heat. While they were still puzzled, Bin Ryu suddenly noticed a blue light emanating from an old well behind them. When Bin Ryu opened the well cover, Ackerman was startled by what he saw. Inside the well was a high-level teleportation gate, rated at level 60, but the wolf demons clearly didn't have the ability to create such a gate, which meant that an even more powerful monster was lurking in the village. To avoid any mishaps, the two decided to leave immediately. But just then, the entire village was suddenly covered in ice and snow. A strange laughter echoed behind them. The sound alone made their souls tremble. Moments later, a trendy skeleton, wearing a massive gold chain, appeared before them. It was the highest level monster Bin Ryu had encountered since leaving the starter village, the level 72 Lich King. This creature was a mage, who had willingly embraced corruption to become undead. It possessed the ability to nullify all physical attacks. The immense difference in levels immediately made Ackerman abandon any thought of fighting it. Ackerman conjured a fireball, and shot it at the Lich. But the Lich casually waved its hand, and absorbed the fireball completely. What it didn't expect, however, was that Ackerman had hidden a magic core inside the fireball. The unguarded Lich's body was instantly pierced through. Seizing the opportunity, Ackerman grabbed Bin Ryu's wrist and ran, knowing that the explosion from the magic core could only hold the Lich for 10 seconds. At that moment, Bin Ryu felt the blood in his body boiling uncontrollably. Is this fear? He thought. No, it feels more like excitement. Suddenly, a 2.5-meter high ice barrier shot up from the ground, blocking their escape. The barrier began to expand, rapidly upward at a visible speed, until it completely enclosed Bin Ryu and Ackerman. The two had no way out. Staying there any longer meant they would freeze to death, just like the hunters they had seen before. Ackerman also noticed that the surrounding Magic energy was completely frozen, rendering his fire magic useless. To make matters worse, the Lich had caught up to them. It unleashed its dual-element magic, ice and fire, demonstrating its terrifying power once again. As the Lich raised its left hand, it unleashed a blast of extreme cold, sending icy energy toward Bin Ryu and Ackerman. Bin Ryu, with his robust physique, could barely withstand it. But behind him, Ackerman was struggling to hold on. The absolute cold made it nearly impossible for him to breathe. Seeing this, Bin Ryu immediately prepared for battle. To avoid exposing his identity, he decided to wait until Ackerman fell unconscious before attacking. But at that moment, suddenly, Ackerman's voice came from behind Bin Ryu. "I'm sorry," Ackerman said. "I'm too selfish." As soon as he finished speaking, Ackerman pulled out a magic core and stabbed it into his own body. To prevent his body temperature from dropping further, he resolutely chose to ignite his internal magic. Then he dashed toward the Lich, throwing several magic cores as he went. A series of violent explosions followed, accompanied by a deafening dragon's roar. A level 52 flame dragon emerged from the smoke before Bin Ryu's eyes. Bin Ryu froze for 2.5 seconds, unable to believe that the handsome Ackerman was actually part of the dragon race. The Lich grinned from ear to ear, because dragons, like earthlings, gained experience points by killing enemies. If he could capture and dissect Ackerman, perhaps he could create that thing ahead of schedule. Lost in his fantasy, the Lich didn't notice Ackerman's dragon breath heading straight for him. The Lich was sent flying like a meteor by the impact of the attack. Although Ackerman's flames could melt the Lich's ice, they couldn't cause any real damage. Suddenly, several ice spikes shot rapidly toward Bin Ryu. Just as Bin Ryu was about to draw his sword to counter them, Ackerman extended his dragon claw and blocked them all. He then shielded Bin Ryu with his own body, fulfilling the promise he had made to Bin Ryu. "I will protect you, no matter what." But as the Lich continued its relentless attacks, Ackerman's body was pierced through by countless ice spikes, rendering him immobile. Bin Ryu called out to Ackerman, shouting his name desperately. He didn't know how much longer Ackerman could last. If the ice spikes embedded in him melted, the wounds would bleed uncontrollably. Even at that moment, Ackerman kept apologizing to Bin Ryu. "If only I were stronger, I promised to protect you. But now, I'm the one who has fallen first."